Hey y'all, hope you're all having a fantastic day today and welcome to another video. So, I've been testing the ROG Ally for the past month now. I've actually brought this to vacation for a lot of my time, and I think now that it's been a month, I think it's a good time to just sit down and give my thoughts about it. Now, as you can see, this is a very different review than how I did the Steam Deck. For the most part, the Steam Deck one was basically scripted, documented. This time, I wanted to give more of a live, unfiltered impressions of the ROG Ally, as I feel like a lot of the points I give to the ROG Ally are very similar to what I gave on the Steam Deck. So this is more or less of a review of the ROG Ally and more so a kind of a comparison of experience between the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck. In fact, let me go grab the Steam Deck right here. So, is it even on? All right, there we go. So just plugged it in just to kind of be there. But this is basically, I just want to kind of compare, even though this is mainly a ROG Ally review, I think it's best to compare these two instead of just strictly reviewing the ROG Ally and if it's worth it. Because I think if you're in the market for a ROG Ally, I think the Steam Deck is better and worse in different scenarios. So let's get into it. So first, let's talk about the feel of the ROG Ally and I guess the construction. If we put these side by side, the ROG Ally is a little bit smaller, so obviously it's going to fit a little bit better in backpacks, though not that significant. So just kind of want to put that in the way. It's also a lot lighter. Now, obviously, I have the D brand, which may add some weight to it, but overall, I think the ROG Ally is a much lighter console, and it feels a lot nicer to hold for longer periods of time because of the lighter weight. Though I will say that the grips here are just a little bit too almost not enough for me. I think for me personally, I think the Steam Deck has the best grip in my opinion. Obviously, I have the D brand, so I may be a little bit biased, but with how protruded these grips are, I think for me personally, the Steam Deck has the better grip than the ROG Ally, so it feels better to play. When it comes to the layouts, we still have the control stick layouts, though it is very different in the how the joysticks are. So here the ROG Ally has a very Xbox style layout with the joystick on the top and aligned with the buttons, this on the bottom. So it's a much more traditional, kind of like an Xbox gamepad, where this is much more kind of like a unique style. I think for specific games, I think like 2D platformers and less precise games, I think the Steam Deck has the better layout. But in terms of more like 3D games or like games such as like racing games, specifically like Forza here, I think the ROG Ally has the better layout just because of that asymmetrical layout with the joysticks. I think having the joystick up here much and closer to your thumb is a lot nicer than what they have here, which is basically kind of almost like a PlayStation layout. Now, I will give the Steam Deck this. The trackpads and the extra buttons here make it really nice for extra flexibility and additional inputs. I think my biggest problem in terms of like controls wise is the fact that there's no way that you can map a PlayStation or an Xbox button per se. And yeah, I mean, having to force to use macros just to access the Xbox button is kind of sucky. It's not the end of the world, but it does kind of suck. I wish there were more buttons, and especially the trackpad. But enough about the physical appearance. Let's talk about specs and experience. So the ROG Ally is a Windows handheld first and foremost. Now, this comes with a lot of pros and a lot of cons. First of all, the biggest pro is that unlike the Steam Deck here, the ROG can play basically most, if not all, games available on Windows, or I guess on PC as a whole, since basically every game on PC is Windows nowadays. So games that have anti-cheat, other launchers such as especially Xbox Game Pass, and games like that run natively on the ROG Ally simply because of its operating system. So like games like Battlefield 2042, Destiny 2, I don't have to install dual boot, anything. It just works out of the box without having to do any issues with that. And especially the Xbox Game Pass games. And I think for those who want to natively play Xbox Game Pass games on their console, the ROG Ally is one of the best experiences to play them, in my personal opinion. So yeah. Another thing I'll give the ROG Ally is the screen. So both of these are running 7-inch displays, but the Ally has a 1080p 120 hertz display, while the Steam Deck has a 800p 60 hertz display. Now, obviously, your opinion of whether or not the screen size matters really is up to you. For me, specifically, personally, I like the Ally screen way more than the Deck screen for a couple of reasons, or I guess for two specific reasons. One, it's a much brighter and more colorful display from what I can tell. So playing more like colorful games like Hi-Fi Rush, colors pop out way more and it's way more vibrant than the Steam Decks here. And second of all is the variable refresh rate. This is kind of like the biggest thing. Even though most games won't run on 120 hertz, and honestly, like I don't recommend playing games at 120 hertz just for battery life purposes, I think having the variable refresh rate here is so nice, much nicer than having to set a flat, having to set a set refresh rate here with a static, because obviously if you go below or if you go above, you'll experience screen tearing, which really isn't all that ideal. So having the variable refresh rate there to prevent tearing like that makes playing lower FPS games because of more demand much nicer to play on the ROG Ally. And on that point, the performance of the ROG Ally is pretty amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Being able to play like games like even Battlefield 2042, or let me launch Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think the chip in this system is so much nicer than the Steam Decks, though that comes with a caveat. So I'll first let me show you. Let me first pause the game. Let me show the real-time monitor here. Right now I'm at 15 watts mode. I set it to 15 watts. This game runs almost flawlessly at 50 to 60 FPS, and the variable refresh rate of the monitor, or I guess the display, makes it so much nicer to play, and prevents a lot of that like jitteriness of the Steam Deck, or not the Steam Deck, the display. Although there is one thing the Steam Deck does have in its favor, and that is lower TDP games. So less demanding games that require lower TDP have a much better battery life and run much better than the lower TDPs on the ROG Ally from my experience. Like playing in 8 to 10 watt mode of some specific games run much worse on the Ally than the Steam Deck. I don't know what it is, but like the games that run on lower TDPs run much better on the Steam Deck. But for more demanding titles where you're going to have to use like 15 watt TDP or higher, I think the ROG Ally wins hands down. This is just such a nice experience compared to the Steam Deck, and I think for me personally, I think for most of my AAA games like Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy VII Remake here, Starfield when that comes out too, I think the ROG Ally is a much better suited console to playing those games over this Steam Deck. Now with that being said, obviously the biggest downside of the ROG Ally is mainly Windows, and it's just Windows being Windows. As you can see here, we are running a Windows operating system in the back, just how it is. Windows, has its own quirks and issues, For first and foremost, the touchscreen on this is not the greatest. I will say that, and navigating without the trackpads that the Steam Deck is kind of a pain in the butt, especially with the joysticks. Also, just some quirkiness with Windows 11. For example, keyboards not popping up as intended. Just little random issues and crashes, and a lot of bloat that kind of piles up on Windows. Now, fortunately, you can debloat a lot of the Windows experience here and only have it the very specific gaming necessities run, so you can disable like widgets and all that stuff, which is nice. But obviously it's Windows, so it's gonna have its own issues trying to do its updates and all that stuff. And yeah, and because of that, I think a lot of the problems with the ROG Ally mainly come with how the software interacts with the hardware. Unlike the Steam Deck, where it's getting constant Steam client and Linux OS updates, the ROG Ally is kind of suffering a little bit just because the drivers are having some issues. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Z1 Extreme is not getting the same driver support as the Ryzen normal mobile trips like other PC handhelds do. So that's kind of a big con of this, or a big no-no. Wish this thing had more driver support, because there are a lot of future features that may come out that may come to other PC handhelds like the GPD Win or the Aya Neo that don't come to this device, simply because it's a different chip, even though technically the Z1 Extreme is just a modified version of those Ryzen 7000 mobile chips that the other devices run on. So that's kind of a big thing there. Kind of makes the Steam Deck a little bit more worth it, just because its support has been absolutely astounding, though obviously not a lot of games will run. The battery life practically at 15-20 watts, kind of like if I put these side by side, honestly the battery life is basically the exact same, if I can be honest with you. If you debloat Windows and just have nothing running except for games, then honestly, like, this entire device's battery life is honestly around the same as the Steam Deck from my experience. Now obviously you can get more with the Steam Deck with lower TDPs and still have a great experience, but in my personal experience, I think both of these devices kind of have basically equal battery life if you put the TDPs on the side and you debloat, go through the work of just making sure you have basically a clean Windows OS. So guys, this is me from the future. I actually had this video postponed because I wanted to have some more time to think about my thoughts, or my final thoughts, on what I think the ROG Ally is really better than the Steam Deck. And especially with competitors like the Legion Go and Aya Neo's new handhelds coming in at a pretty close price point to the ROG Ally. It's getting very competitive now in the PC handheld space. So I think overall, I think the ROG Ally does what it does very well, which is playing more demanding games better than the Steam Deck. But there's obviously a lot of issues with the ROG Ally. Some things I actually never noted was, one, the SD card reader. I know that's been a big point of contention, as well as Asus quality control, especially compared to Valve's support. I think Asus really needs to step up their game. I've seen so many people complain about their customer support, and honestly, like, Valve has been absolutely incredible with their customer support. So to be honest, I think for most people, I think it's gonna be a wait and see, because with all these other handhelds out on the market, I think the ROG Ally is kind of a tough sell at the moment until we see what these other PC handhelds can do. And if you just want to deal with hassle-free, then honestly, I think the Steam Deck will be more than fine for a lot of people. That's going to be my overall thoughts. I think the ROG Ally, if you're an Asus fanboy or you just want something right now, I think the ROG Ally is a fantastic system, albeit a very flawed system, but I think for most people, I think it'd be best to just wait and see what the other PC handhelds can do. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Hopefully we see more ROG Ally footage here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.